Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm going to be using some products from Simon Says Stamp. This is from their Stamp Timber release. I have the Deborah stencil and also the Fractile Leaves stamp set. I will be adding a third stamp set from the same release on this card as well, but I will talk about that when I get to it in the video. So the first thing I'm doing is attaching the Deborah stencil to this white cardstock. This is some Neenah Solar white cardstock, and I'm going to flip this over and tape it down from the back. This allows me to blend all the way up to the very edge of the paper, and I don't have to mask off any areas or conceal any areas just because there's tape there. So it's going to be really easy to go all the way to the edge. I'm using 5 different colors of Distress Oxide ink, starting out with Fossilized Amber. And the reason why I wanted to use these specific colors is I really wanted to make like an autumn or autumnal color palette with these oxide inks. I think because they have a really soft finish to them once they're blended, I think it goes really well with kind of like autumn color tones. Now you can get really bright colors with Distress Oxides, but for me in my mind, I think they all kind of have like a softer kind of toned look to them. So I think it goes really well with kind of an autumn color palette. So I first used Fossilized Amber, and now I'm using some Spice Marmalade. I'm going to blend these in just kind of in different sections and make sure I blend in each color with the color that's next to it. I've moved on to Fired Brick. I'm going to hold down the stencil while I glide this over the area. Now, I know some people, because I've received some comments and questions about it, do run into some trouble when they're using dainty stencils like this. And it's because it can really move around and you don't get a really good impression. So when I'm using the stencils that are really delicate and intricate like this, I make sure they're taped down really well. And then when I come in and start moving around, I almost do like a up and down stamping motion when I start. And then after that, I let up the pressure and kind of envision that blending tool gliding across the surface. I also make sure that I'm holding down the stencil fairly close to the area where I'm blending. You'll notice that my fingertips are right up next to where I'm blending. This really presses the stencil down and makes sure it doesn't shift around and move too much. I also used a Post-it note and just stuck my fingers down to it, and that allows me to not only protect my fingers from getting ink on them, but it also protects the blending from getting my fingerprints on it. Because Distress Oxide inks, they will activate with any sort of moisture, so even the oils or moistures from your fingertips can change the look of Distress Oxide inks. So I'm going to lift this up, and you can see how bright and vibrant that white area from the stencil is. And I thought it was almost a little bit too stark, so I'm going to go back over those areas and add just a tiny bit of blending using the colors that are in that same area. So I brought in some of that Fossilized Amber and some of the Fired Brick and Seedless Preserves, and then I'm coming in with the Vintage Photo and just kind of evening out that area. So I set that aside, and I grabbed another piece of Neenah Solar white cardstock. I'm stamping the leaf, one of the leaves from the Fractile Leaf stamp set in Versamark ink, and then I used Simon Says Stamp Antique Gold embossing powder. I just sprinkled this on top, and I'm using a coffee filter to catch that embossing powder below. I'll just tap that off, and then I used a heat tool to melt that. And unfortunately, I didn't catch it on camera. I must have moved it off my work area when I was heat setting this, but I did use my heat tool until it was smooth and melted. Then I trimmed it out using scissors, and then I also cut down my blended piece so that it's slightly smaller than a standard card. So the finished card size for that, or finished size for that blended piece, was 3 3/4 wide by 5 inches tall. And now I'm using the, I think it's Live Well stamp set, I think that's what it was called, and I'm stamping the Hello stamp in Versamark ink onto some vellum cardstock. And I'm just inking that up, and then I'll swing that over in my MISTI tool. And the reason I'm using a MISTI tool is because vellum can be pretty slick if you're using a really wet ink like Versamark. And I wanted to make sure that when I stamp down that I wouldn't like move around too much and get a blurry line on my stamped image. So I used that same embossing powder and also the heat tool just to heat that until it was melted. And then I trimmed out that piece so that it was a little bit smaller. Or actually not a little, a lot smaller. It's a nice narrow strip. Then took some white wood grain cardstock. This is from Simon Says Stamp as well. And I scored that at 4 1/4 to create an A2 sized card. I then put some foam adhesive on the back of my blended piece, and I was not shy with the foam tape. I want to make sure there aren't any areas where they're sagging or it doesn't have enough foam tape underneath. Then put some foam tape on the back of that leaf shape that I stamped earlier. So in order to adhere the Hello vellum piece, I didn't want any adhesive showing, so I'm going to use some Cool Tack clear foam adhesive. These are little squares that are clear, and I use my scissors to cut the squares down to be even smaller, and then I put them behind the letters that are embossed. You can kind of see them right there. And then place that over the top of that leaf. And that pretty much finishes off the card for today. Like I mentioned earlier, the stamp sets and the stencil that I used today are part of Simon Says Stamp's Stamptember release. Stamptember is a month-long celebration at Simon Says Stamp. It's all about stamps and card making and just getting creative. This is part of a blog hop, so if you want to see even more inspiration from the Stamptember release, head over to my blog. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll catch you guys in another video very soon.